When nurse Jake Morrison invited billionaire Elon Musk to read poetry at a children's hospital fundraiser, he thought he'd created the perfect prank. Jake expected the tech genius to stumble awkwardly through emotional verses, giving everyone a good laugh while raising money for sick kids. But Jake had no idea that his cruel joke would accidentally unlock something beautiful in the man who builds rockets and dreams of Mars. What happened at Halloween night would change not just the children fighting for their lives, but the heart of a man who had forgotten his own childhood poem about hope. Dr. Maya Chen pulled off her medical gloves and threw them in the trash. Her hands were shaking, not from the cold air that blew through Austin Children's Hospital, but from tiredness that went deep into her bones. It was almost 8 o'clock at night. Maya had been working since 6 in the morning, 14 hours of taking care of kids who were fighting for their lives. 14 hours of trying to smile when parents asked if their children would be okay. Maya walked down the long hallway past rooms filled with brave little fighters. Through one open door, she saw 8-year-old Tommy Valdez reading a book about rockets. His bald head shined under the hospital lights. The cancer treatments had taken all his hair, but they hadn't taken his dreams. "Hi, Dr. Maya," Tommy called out when he saw her. "Look what my mom brought me." He held up a picture book about astronauts going to Mars. His thin arms could barely lift the heavy book, but his smile was huge. "That's wonderful, Tommy," Maya said, stepping into his room. "Are you still planning to be the first kid on Mars?" "You bet," Tommy said. His voice was small but full of hope. "I just have to beat this stupid cancer first. Then I'm going to build rockets and fly to space." Maya's heart felt heavy. Tommy's test results from yesterday weren't good. The cancer was growing faster than the medicine could stop it. But she couldn't tell him that, not when his eyes sparkled with so much hope. "I believe in you, Tommy," she said, meaning every word. Maya said goodnight to Tommy and walked to the nurse's station. Her friend Jake Morrison was there, filling out charts. Jake had worked at the hospital for 5 years. He was the kind of nurse who always tried to make everyone laugh, even on the hardest days. "You look terrible," Jake said, looking up from his paperwork. "Thanks a lot," Maya replied, sitting down in the chair next to him. "Just what every woman wants to hear after a 14-hour day." Jake laughed. "You know what I mean. When's the last time you went home before 9 o'clock? Maya thought about it. She couldn't remember. For the past 3 months, she'd been staying late every night. There were too many sick kids and not enough doctors. The hospital needed more money for new equipment, but the funds just weren't there. "Dr. Chen to room 204. Dr. Chen to room 204. The speaker above them announced. Maya started to get up, but Jake put his hand on her arm. "I'll go," he said. "You sit here and breathe for 5 minutes." While Jake was gone, Maya looked around the pediatric wing. The walls were decorated with drawings made by the kids. Stick figures of families holding hands, rainbows with too many colors, pictures of houses with crooked windows and doors. One drawing caught her eye. It was made by Sarah Kim, a quiet 10-year-old girl with brain cancer. Sarah had drawn a picture of herself looking up at the stars. Under the picture, she had written in shaky letters, "I want to see the stars without getting dizzy." Sarah's tumor made her lose her balance. Simple things like walking down the hall were hard for her, but she never complained. She just wrote in her diary every day, filling pages with her thoughts and dreams. Jake came back a few minutes later. "False alarm," he said. Mrs. Johnson thought Marcus was having trouble breathing, but he was just laughing too hard at his own jokes. Maya smiled. Marcus Johnson was 7 years old and had lymphoma, but somehow he was always making people laugh, even when he felt sick from his treatments. He would tell funny stories or make silly faces to cheer up the other kids. "Jake," Maya said suddenly, "we need to do something." "About what?" "About this place. About these kids." Maya pointed toward the rooms where Tommy, Sarah, and Marcus were trying to sleep. "We're going to lose 3 more kids this month if we don't get that new treatment equipment." Jake's smile faded. He knew she was right. The hospital had old machines that couldn't give the kids the best care possible. They needed newer, better equipment that cost $500,000. "The board is planning another fundraiser," Jake said. "But you know how those go. Rich people come, eat fancy food. write small checks, and leave feeling good about themselves. Maya sighed. It was true. The hospital had tried fundraisers before. They never raised enough money to make a real difference. What if we did something different? Jake asked, a strange look in his eyes. What do you mean? Jake looked around to make sure no one was listening. Then he leaned closer to Maya. What if we invited someone really famous, someone who would get people excited and make them want to give more money? Like who? Maya asked. Like Elon Musk. Maya stared at him. The guy who builds rockets and electric cars. Jake, be serious. I am serious, Jake said, his voice getting excited. Think about it. He's super famous. If he came to our fundraiser, everyone would want to be here. The news would cover it. We could raise way more money than usual. Maya shook her head. Why would someone like Elon Musk come to a children's hospital in Austin? He's probably too busy building cars or planning trips to Mars. Jake grinned. That's where my plan gets really good. What plan? We invite him to read poetry. Maya looked at Jake like he was crazy. Poetry? Think about it, Jake said, getting more excited. The guy talks about rockets and computers all day. He probably doesn't know anything about feelings or emotions. It would be hilarious to watch him try to read poems in front of a bunch of kids and parents. Maya felt uncomfortable. That sounds mean, Jake. It's not mean, Jake said. It's just funny. And if it helps us raise money for the kids, what's the harm? Besides, he's a billionaire. He can handle a little embarrassment. Maya thought about Tommy's dream of going to Mars. She thought about Sarah wanting to see stars without getting dizzy. She thought about Marcus making everyone laugh even when he felt terrible. The hospital really did need money. Without new equipment, more kids would suffer. Some might even die. How would we even contact him? Maya asked. Through his company, Jake said. We send an official invitation from the hospital. We tell him it's for charity and ask him to read some poems at our Halloween fundraiser. You really think he would say yes? Jake shrugged. Probably not. But what if he does? What if we actually get him here, and he tries to read poetry, and it's awkward and funny, and everyone talks about it? We could raise enough money to save lives, Maya. Maya looked down the hall toward the children's rooms. She could hear Tommy's mom reading him a bedtime story. She could see Sarah's light still on as she wrote in her diary. She could hear Marcus giggling at something on his tablet. These kids deserve the best care possible. They deserved a chance to fight their diseases with the newest, most powerful treatments available. Okay, Maya said quietly. Let's try it. Jake's face lit up. Really? But we do this the right way. We send a proper invitation through official hospital channels. We don't lie about what we're asking him to do. Deal, Jake said. I'll start working on the invitation tomorrow. As Maya finally headed home that night, she felt nervous about what they were planning. Part of her hoped Elon Musk would say no. The whole thing felt wrong somehow. But as she walked past Tommy's room one last time, she heard him talking to his Mama, do you think I'll really get to be an astronaut someday? I hope so, baby. His mom whispered back. I hope so. Maya made a promise to herself right then. Whatever it took to help these kids, she would do it. Even if it meant playing along with Jake's crazy plan. She had no idea that this decision would change everything. 3 days later, Jake Morrison walked into Maya's office with a big smile on his face. He was holding a piece of paper like it was made of gold. I did it, he said, waving the paper in the air. I wrote the perfect invitation. Maya looked up from her computer where she was reviewing Tommy's latest test results. The numbers weren't good, but she tried to push that worry aside. Let me see it, she said. Jake sat down across from her desk and cleared his throat. Dear Mr. Musk, he began reading. Austin Children's Hospital would be honored to have you as our special guest at our Halloween fundraising event on October 30th. We know how busy you are building rockets and planning trips to Mars, but we were hoping you might share some poetry with our young patients and their families. Maya raised her eyebrows. Poetry? You actually wrote that? Wait, it gets better, Jake continued. We believe that hearing beautiful words from someone as smart and successful as you would bring great joy to children who are fighting serious illnesses. Would you be willing to choose some of your favorite poems to read aloud at our event? Jake, this is Maya started to say, I know. It sounds official and nice, right? But think about it. The guy probably never reads poetry. He'll either say no, or he'll show up and stumble through some poems he found on the internet 5 minutes before coming here. Maya felt that uncomfortable feeling in her stomach again. What if he's actually good at it? Jake laughed. Come on, Maya. Have you ever seen him give speeches? The guy talks like a robot about technology stuff. Poetry is all about feelings and emotions. It'll be like watching a computer try to cry. Maya took the invitation and read it again. It did sound official and respectful. Maybe Jake was right. Maybe this would work. How do we send this to him? She asked. I already looked it up. We send it to his assistant at SpaceX headquarters in California. Her name is Elena Vasquez. The next morning, Maya sent the invitation through the hospital's official email system. She made sure it came from her doctor account and included the hospital's letterhead. She didn't want this to look like a joke or a fake request. After hitting send, Maya tried not to think about it. She had real work to do. Tommy needed more blood tests. Sarah was having trouble with her balance again. Marcus was starting a new round of treatment that might make him feel sick for days. But Jake couldn't stop talking about their plan. I bet his assistant just deletes it. Jake said during lunch break. Rich people probably get 1,000 weird requests every day. Maybe that would be for the best. Maya replied. Are you kidding? This is going to be amazing. I'm already imagining his face when he realizes he has to read love poems or something in front of a bunch of kids. Miles away in Hawthorne, California, Elena Vasquez sat at her desk on the 10th floor of the SpaceX building. She had been Elon Musk's executive assistant for 3 years. In that time, she had seen every kind of strange request you could imagine. People wanted him to name their babies. They wanted him to buy their inventions. They wanted him to come to their weddings, their graduations, their birthday parties. Elena was very good at saying no politely. But when she opened the mail from Austin Children's Hospital, she paused. This one was different. The request was simple and straightforward. A children's hospital wanted Musk to read poetry at a fundraiser for sick kids. Elena had never seen a request quite like this one. She knocked on Musk's office door. Come in. His voice called from inside. Elena found him standing at a huge whiteboard covered with drawings of rocket engines. His hair was messy, and he looked like he hadn't slept much. This was normal for him. Elon, I have an unusual request. Here, Elena said, holding up the printed email. Musk didn't look away from his whiteboard. What kind of unusual? A children's hospital in Austin wants you to read poetry at their fundraiser. Now Musk turned around. Poetry, Elena nodded. They want you to choose some poems and read them to sick children and their families. It's for Halloween night. Musk walked over to his desk and sat down. He looked tired, but something about this request made him curious. What kind of poetry? He asked. They didn't say. They want you to pick your favorites. Musk was quiet for a long moment. Elena had worked for him long enough to know that his brain was processing this information in a very detailed way. When was the last time I read poetry? He asked, more to himself than to Elena. I don't know, sir. Musk leaned back in his chair. Suddenly, he wasn't thinking about rocket engines or electric car batteries. He was thinking about being a young boy in South Africa, sitting with his mother while she read him poems from an old book. His mother, May, used to say that poems were like music for the heart. She would read him words by poets he couldn't pronounce, but somehow the sounds and rhythms made him feel calm and happy. When had he stopped thinking about things like that? Elena, do I have anything scheduled for October 30th? He asked. Elena quickly checked his calendar on her tablet. You have a design meeting with the engineers at 4 o'clock, but it could be moved. Move it, Musk said quietly. Sir, move the meeting. Tell the hospital I'll do it. Elena stared at him. In 3 years of working together, she had never seen him accept an invitation like this. He usually preferred to donate money instead of making public appearances. Are you sure? She asked. Musk nodded. Tell them I need about an hour for the poetry reading, and I'll choose my own poems. After Elena left his office, Musk sat alone thinking. He couldn't explain why he said yes to this strange request. Something about the idea of reading poetry to sick children felt important. That evening, Musk drove home to his house in Austin, instead of working on his laptop like usual. He went to his study and looked through his bookshelves. Hidden behind several engineering textbooks, he found what he was looking for. It was an old book of poetry that had belonged to his mother. The cover was worn and the pages were yellow with age. Musk opened the book carefully. He hadn't looked at it in years, but he remembered some of the poems from his childhood. He started reading, and something strange happened. For the first time in months, his mind wasn't racing with thoughts about work or business or technology. The words on the page seemed to slow everything down. He read a poem by Robert Frost about roads and choices. He read words by Maya Angelou about hope and strength. He read verses by Emily Dickinson about birds and songs and dreams. As he read, Musk realized something important. He had spent so much time building things and solving problems that he had forgotten about the power of simple words to touch people's hearts. Maybe this poetry reading would be exactly what he needed. He had no idea that across the country, a nurse named Jake was planning for him to embarrass himself, or that a doctor named Maya was feeling guilty about the whole thing. All Musk knew was that for the first time in a long time, he was excited about something that had nothing to do with rockets or cars. He was excited about sharing words that might make sick children feel a little bit better. The next morning at Austin Children's Hospital, Maya Chen was checking on Sarah Kim when her phone buzzed with an email. She almost dropped her clipboard when she saw who it was from Dr. Chen. Sarah asked from her hospital bed, "Are you okay? You look funny." Maya stared at her phone screen. The email was from Elena Vasquez at SpaceX. The subject line read, "Mr. Musk's response to your invitation." "I'm fine, sweetie," Maya told Sarah, though her hands were shaking slightly. "I just got some surprising news." Sarah was working on a new poem in her diary. Her handwriting was shaky because of her brain tumor, but she wrote every day anyway. Today she was writing about what it felt like to hope for something you weren't sure would happen. Good news or bad news? Sarah asked. Maya opened the email and read it quickly. "I think it's good news," she said, though she wasn't entirely sure. The email was short and professional. Mr. Musk would be happy to attend the Halloween fundraiser on October 30th. He would read poetry for approximately 1 hour. He requested that the hospital provide a microphone and a small table for his books. He said yes, Maya whispered. "Who said yes to what?" Sarah asked, curious. Maya realized she had been talking out loud. "Oh, just someone agreeing to help with our Halloween party." After finishing her rounds, Maya went straight to find Jake. She found him in the supply room, counting medical supplies. "Jake," she said, closing the door behind her. He said yes. Jake looked up from his clipboard. "Who said yes?" "Elon Musk. He's coming to our fundraiser." Jake dropped his clipboard, and supplies scattered across the floor. "You're kidding." "I'm not kidding. His assistant sent an email this morning. He'll be here on Halloween night to read poetry." Jake started laughing. "This is perfect. This is going to be even better than I imagined. Wait until people hear about this. The guy who builds rockets is coming to read poems to kids." Maya felt that uncomfortable feeling in her stomach getting stronger. "Jake, what if we're making a mistake?" "What do you mean? What if this isn't funny? What if it's just mean?" Jake waved his hand like he was brushing away her worries. "Maya, the guy is a billionaire. He can handle one embarrassing evening. And think about how much money we'll raise. Every rich person in Austin will want to come see this." While Maya and Jake were talking about their plan, something very different was happening at Musk's house in Austin. Musk had spent the entire evening reading through his mother's old poetry book. He had marked several poems that spoke to him, but he wanted to find more. He drove to a bookstore downtown and bought 3 more books of poetry. He felt a little silly standing in line with books by Maya Angelou, Langston Hughes, and Emily Dickinson while other customers bought novels and magazines. The teenage cashier looked at his purchases with curiosity. "Poetry fan?" she asked. "I'm learning to be," Musk replied honestly. That night, Musk sat in his study reading poem after poem. He was looking for words that would bring comfort to children who were scared and in pain. He wanted to find verses that would give hope to parents who were watching their kids fight terrible diseases. As he read, memories of his own childhood came flooding back. He remembered being 12 years old in Pretoria, South Africa. He remembered being smaller than the other boys at school. He remembered how some of the older kids would push him around and call him names. He remembered coming home with bruises and feeling alone. His mother had always been there for him during those hard times. She would sit with him and read poetry until he felt better. The words didn't make the bullies go away, but somehow they made him feel less afraid. Poetry is like medicine for the heart. His mother used to say, "It doesn't fix everything, but it helps you remember that you're not alone." Now, 30 years later, Musk was choosing poems for children who were fighting battles much harder than anything he had faced as a kid. He found a poem by Maya Angelou called "On the Pulse of Morning." The words were powerful and hopeful. Practiced reading it out loud, trying to put feeling into his voice. He found verses by Langston Hughes about dreams and never giving up. He discovered Emily Dickinson's poem about hope being the thing with feathers that never stops singing. Each poem he chose felt important, like it might be exactly what some child or parent needed to hear back at the hospital. Word was spreading quickly about Musk's visit. The hospital director was thrilled. The marketing team was already planning press releases. Local TV stations were calling to ask about covering the event. Maya walked through the pediatric ward, trying to focus on her patients. But everywhere she went, people were talking about the famous visitor who was coming. "Dr. Maya," Tommy called out when she passed his room. "I heard someone famous is coming to see us." Maya stepped into Tommy's room. He was sitting up in bed, looking more excited than she had seen him in weeks. "Where did you hear that?" she asked. "Nurse Jake told me. He said the Rocket Man is coming for Halloween." Maya's heart sank. Tommy's eyes were shining with excitement. This wasn't just entertainment for him, it was something to look forward to during his difficult treatment. "Tommy, you know he's just coming to read some poems, right?" Maya said gently. "It's not like he's bringing a rocket or anything." "I don't care," Tommy said. "He builds the rockets that go to space. Maybe he'll tell me what it's like up there, in the room next door." Marcus Johnson was telling his parents about the upcoming visit. Marcus had been feeling sick from his latest round of chemotherapy, but news of the special guest had perked him up. "Maybe he'll let me ask him questions," Marcus said to his mom. "I want to know if rockets are allowed when they take off." Down the hall, Sarah Kim was writing a new poem in her diary. This one was about meeting someone famous and hoping they would like her writing. Maya realized that Jake's prank had already become something bigger than either of them had planned. The children weren't just curious about meeting a celebrity. They were genuinely excited about the possibility of connection with someone who represented dreams and possibilities. That evening, Maya called her sister in California. "I think I made a mistake," Maya told her sister. "What kind of mistake?" "The kind that starts as a joke but turns into something that could hurt people's feelings." Maya explained the whole situation, Jake's prank idea, the invitation, and Musk's acceptance. "Maybe it won't be as bad as you think," her sister said. "Maybe he'll surprise you. Or maybe we'll embarrass him and disappoint a bunch of sick kids at the same time." After hanging up, Maya sat in her apartment thinking about Tommy's excited face and Sarah's hopeful poem. She thought about Marcus planning his questions about rockets. She realized that no matter what happened on Halloween night, these children were already invested in the event. Their hopes were already tied to this stranger who was coming to read them poetry. Maya made a decision. Tomorrow she would talk to Jake about calling off the prank part of their plan. Maybe they couldn't stop Musk from coming, but they could at least stop thinking of it as a joke. The children deserved better than that. Halloween morning came to Austin Children's Hospital with orange and black decorations hanging from every ceiling. Maya Chen arrived at work early, her stomach full of butterflies. Today was the day. She had tried to talk to Jake yesterday about stopping the prank, but he wouldn't listen. "Maya, you're being too serious," Jake had said. "This is going to be fun. Everyone will laugh, we'll raise money, and nobody gets hurt." But Maya knew better now. She had seen the excitement in the children's eyes. She had watched Tommy practice walking with his forepaws so he could meet the Rocket Man properly. She had seen Sarah write 3 new poems, hoping to share them with someone who might understand. The hospital lobby had been transformed into a Halloween wonderland. Pumpkins set on every table, fake spider webs hung in corners. The children who were well enough had made paper decorations that covered the walls. Tommy Valdez was wheeled into the lobby in his wheelchair early that morning. He wore his favorite astronaut costume with silver suit his grandmother had made for him last year. The costume was too big now because he had lost weight. But his smile was bigger than ever. "Dr. Maya," he called out when he saw her. "Do you think Mr. Musk will like my costume?" Maya knelt down next to Tommy's wheelchair. "I think he'll love it," she said, and she meant it. Sarah Kim came slowly down the hallway, holding her mother's hand for balance. She was wearing a witch costume, but she carried her diary with her new poems. Her hands shook a little as she walked, but she was determined to make it to the lobby on her own 2 feet. "Mom, what if he doesn't want to hear my poems?" Sarah whispered. "Then, that's his loss, sweetheart," her mother replied. "Your poems are beautiful." Marcus Johnson arrived in style, pushed in a wagon decorated like a rocket ship. His parents had spent hours making the costume, complete with silver paint and cardboard fins. Even though Marcus felt tired from his treatments, he was making rocket ship noises as they pulled him into the lobby. "Whoosh, prepare for landing," Marcus announced, making everyone around him laugh. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the lobby was packed. Local news crews had set up cameras near the stage. Wealthy donors from around Austin filled the chairs, curious to see the famous tech billionaire read poetry to sick children. Maya watched the crowd grow and felt more nervous by the minute. What if Jake was right? What if Musk really would embarrass himself? What if all these people were here just to see someone fail? Jake found her standing near the back of the room. "This is incredible," he said, looking at all the cameras and people. "We're going to raise so much money today." "Jake," Maya said quietly, "I have a bad feeling about this." "Why? Everything is perfect." Before Maya could answer, a hospital security guard spoke into his radio. "He's here," the guard announced. Outside the hospital, a simple black car pulled up to the main entrance. Elon Musk stepped out, wearing a dark suit and carrying a small leather bag. He looked nervous, which was unusual for someone who usually seemed confident in public. Elena Vasquez got out of the car behind him, along with 2 security guards. "Are you ready for this?" Elena asked Musk as they walked toward the hospital entrance. Musk touched the leather bag he was carrying. Inside were the poetry books he had been studying for weeks. He had chosen 5 poems that he hoped would bring comfort and hope to the children and their families. "I think so," he said quietly. As they entered the hospital lobby, the crowd turned to look. Camera flashes went off. People started clapping, but Musk wasn't looking at the cameras or the crowd. His eyes went straight to the children. He saw Tommy, in his oversized astronaut costume, sitting up as tall as he could in his wheelchair. He saw Sarah clutching her diary, standing on unsteady legs next to her mother. He saw Marcus in his rocket ship wagon, waving with both hands. Something shifted in Musk's chest. These weren't just sick children waiting for entertainment. These were brave kids fighting the hardest battles imaginable, and somehow they had found the energy to dress up and smile for him. Maya stepped forward to greet him. "Mr. Musk, I'm Dr. Maya Chen. Thank you so much for coming. Please, call me Elon," he said, shaking her hand. "Thank you for inviting me." Maya was surprised by how gentle his voice sounded. This wasn't the sharp, business-focused tone she had heard in his TV interviews. "Would you like to meet some of the children before we start?" Maya asked. "I'd love to," Musk replied. Maya led him over to Tommy first. When the 8-year-old boy saw the famous rocket builder walking toward him, his face lit up like a Christmas tree. "Mr. Elon," Tommy said, his voice full of excitement. "I'm Tommy. I'm going to be an astronaut just like you want to send to Mars." Musk knelt down so he was at Tommy's eye level. "That's an amazing dream, Tommy. What's your favorite thing about space?" "I love that it's so big," Tommy said seriously. "Even if I'm stuck here in the hospital, I can look up at the sky and know there's this whole huge universe out there waiting for me." Musk felt his throat get tight. "That's exactly right." He said softly. The universe is waiting for brave explorers like you. Next, Maya introduced him to Sarah. The shy 10-year-old girl held her diary against her chest and looked up at Musk with wide eyes. Sarah writes beautiful poetry, Maya told Musk. She's quite talented. Really, Musk said, sitting down in a chair so he wouldn't tower over Sarah. I'd love to hear about your writing. Sarah's mother gently encouraged her to speak up. Tell him about your star poem, honey. I wrote a poem about wanting to see the stars without getting dizzy, Sarah whispered. Because my tumor makes everything spin sometimes. Musk's expression grew very serious. That sounds like a beautiful and important poem. Poetry helps us say things that are hard to put into regular words. Finally, Maya brought him to Marcus, who immediately started making rocket noises. Whoosh, Mr. Rocket Man, do you want to see my spaceship? Marcus asked, pointing to his decorated wagon. Musk examined the cardboard rocket ship with the same serious attention he might give to a real spacecraft design. This is excellent engineering, he told Marcus. I especially like the fin design, very aerodynamic. Marcus giggled with delight. My dad helped me make it. As Musk talked with each child, Maya watched his face carefully. She didn't see someone preparing to stumble through poems he didn't understand. She saw someone who was genuinely moved by these brave kids. Jake appeared next to Maya, holding his phone ready to record. This is going better than I expected, he whispered. He's actually pretty good with the kids. But wait until he has to read poetry in front of everyone. That's when it'll get interesting. Maya looked at Jake with growing concern. She was beginning to realize that they might have made a terrible mistake. The hospital director stepped up to the microphone on the small stage. Ladies and gentlemen, children and families, welcome to our Halloween poetry fundraiser. The crowd applauded as Musk walked toward the stage. He touched his leather bag again, feeling the poetry books inside. In the audience, Tommy sat up straighter in his wheelchair. Sarah held her diary tighter. Marcus stopped making rocket noises and watched with wide eyes. Everyone was about to discover what happened when a tech billionaire tried to share poetry with sick children. But Maya had a feeling that Jake's expectations were about to be proven very wrong. Elon Musk stepped up to the microphone on the small stage. The hospital lobby fell completely silent. Even the youngest children stopped whispering. Camera lights from the news crews made everything bright and warm. Musk looked out at the crowd of sick children, worried parents, hospital staff, and curious donors. His hands trembled slightly as he opened his leather bag and pulled out his worn poetry books. Jake Morrison stood near the back of the room, his phone held high and ready to record. He had a big smile on his face, waiting for the awkward moment when the tech billionaire would stumble over emotional words he didn't understand. This should be good, Jake whispered to another nurse standing next to him, but Maya Chen watched Musk's face carefully. Something about his expression made her think Jake was about to be very surprised. Musk adjusted the microphone and spoke in a voice that was softer and warmer than his usual business tone. I want to thank Dr. Chen and the staff here for inviting me tonight, he began. When I first got this invitation, I wondered what a guy who builds rockets and cars could possibly offer to children and families going through such difficult times. Tommy Valdez sat up straighter in his astronaut costume, hanging on every word. But then I remembered something my mother told me when I was young, Musk continued. She said that words have a special kind of power. They can take us places we've never been. They can help us feel things we thought we'd forgotten. And sometimes, they can remind us that we're not alone in this big, complicated world. Sarah Kim clutched her diary tighter, surprised by how gentle his voice sounded. Musk opened his first book to a page he had marked with a small piece of paper. I'd like to start with a poem by Maya Angelou. It's called On the Pulse of Morning. Jake lowered his phone slightly. This wasn't starting the way he had expected. Musk began to read, and something magical happened. His voice, which was usually sharp and focused on technical details, became musical and warm. The words seemed to flow from him like he was sharing a secret with each person in the room. A rock, a river, a tree. He read, hosts to species long since departed, marked the mastodon, the dinosaur, who left dried tokens of their sojourn here. As Musk continued reading, His voice grew stronger and more confident. The poem talked about new beginnings and hope for the future. It spoke about how every day was a chance to start fresh. No matter what had happened before, Tommy felt something strange happening in his chest. The words made him think about his dreams of going to Mars, but also about how brave he was being right here on Earth. Sarah stopped fidgeting with her blanket and listened with her whole heart. The poem reminded her of the feelings she tried to put into her own writing. Marcus Johnson's parents looked at each other in surprise. They had expected a quick speech from a busy businessman, not this beautiful reading that was making their eyes water. When Musk finished the first poem, the room was completely quiet for a moment. Then Tommy started clapping, and soon everyone joined in. The applause was warm and genuine. "That was beautiful," said Mrs. Kim, Sarah's mother, wiping a tear from her eye. Jake looked around the room, confused. This wasn't going how he had planned at all. Where was the awkwardness? Where was the stumbling over words? Musk sounded like he actually understood what he was reading. Musk smiled at the response and opened his second book. "I have another poem I'd like to share. This one is by Emily Dickinson, and it's about hope." He found the page he had marked and began to read in that same warm, musical voice. "Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul, and sings the tune without the words, and never stops at all." As he read these words about hope being like a little bird that never gives up singing, something amazing happened in the room. Children who had been fighting terrible diseases for months felt a lightness they hadn't experienced in a long time. Parents who had been staying strong for so long allowed themselves to feel genuine hope. Again, hospital staff members who saw difficult things every day found themselves deeply moved by the simple beauty of the words. Tommy thought about the little bird of hope singing in his heart. Even when the cancer treatments made him feel sick and tired, Sarah imagined hope as a bird perched inside her chest, singing songs that helped her balance when her tumor made the world spin. Marcus pictured a funny little bird wearing a tiny astronaut helmet, singing rocket ship songs. When Musk finished reading about hope, the silence in the room was even deeper than before. Then Dr. Martinez, the head of oncology, started clapping. Soon the entire room was applauding, and some people were wiping tears from their eyes. Jake put his phone down completely. This wasn't funny or embarrassing at all. This was actually beautiful. Maya felt a mix of relief and shame. Relief that the children were hearing something wonderful instead of witnessing someone's embarrassment. Shame that she had ever agreed to treat this as a prank. But Musk wasn't finished yet. Instead of stepping away from the microphone like everyone expected, he stayed at the podium. He closed his poetry books and looked directly at the children in the audience. "I wasn't planning to share this," he said, his voice catching slightly. "But being here tonight, meeting all of you incredible kids, has reminded me of something I wrote a very long time ago." The room grew even quieter, if that was possible. Even the news cameras seemed to focus more closely. "When I was about 12 years old, I was having a really hard time," Musk continued. "I was living in South Africa, and some kids at school were mean to me every day. I was smaller than most of the other boys, and I liked reading books more than playing sports." The children in the audience understood exactly what he meant. They knew what it felt like to be different, to feel scared, to wish things were easier. "One day I came home with a black eye and a bloody nose," Musk said. "My mother found me crying in my room. She sat with me and said something I'll never forget. She said, 'Elon, sometimes when we're in our darkest moments, we find light we didn't know was there.'" Tommy, Sarah, and Marcus listened with complete attention. This famous, successful man was telling them about being scared and hurt, just like they sometimes felt. "That night, I wrote my very first poem," Musk said. "I was just a frightened kid. But somehow putting my feelings into words helped me feel less alone." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a piece of paper that looked old and worn. It was folded carefully, like someone had carried it for many years. "I've never read this poem to anyone," Musk said, his voice becoming even softer. "But tonight feels like exactly the right time to share it." Jake stood frozen, realizing that his prank had somehow led to this incredibly personal moment. Maya held her breath, knowing that whatever was about to happen would be the opposite of embarrassing. In the audience, every child leaned forward, every parent listened closely, and every staff member prepared to hear something special. Musk unfolded the old paper with trembling hands and looked at the words he had written as a scared 12-year-old boy 30 years ago. The most powerful moment of the evening was about to begin. Elon Musk held the worn piece of paper in his hands, looking down at the words he had written as a scared 12-year-old boy. The hospital lobby was so quiet that people could hear their own heartbeats. Tommy Valdez gripped the armrests of his wheelchair, leaning forward as far as he could. Sarah Kim stopped breathing for a moment, clutching her diary against her chest. Marcus Johnson sat perfectly still in his rocket ship wagon, his usual giggles replaced by wide-eyed attention. Even the news cameras seemed to zoom in closer. Sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen, I called this poem When the Stars Remember, Musk said, his voice barely above a whisper. I wrote it the night after those boys hurt me at school. I was alone in my room, scared and sad. And somehow these words just came to me. Jake Morrison felt his stomach drop. This wasn't the awkward stumbling he had expected. This was something real and personal and beautiful. His prank had somehow led to this moment where a famous billionaire was about to share his deepest childhood feelings with a room full of sick children. Maya Chen watched Musk's face and saw something she hadn't expected: a vulnerability. This powerful man who built rockets and ran companies was showing the scared little boy he used to be. Musk unfolded the paper completely and began to read in a voice that was soft but clear. When the stars remember what it's like to be small, they send down silver wishes to catch us when we fall. As soon as he spoke the first lines, something magical happened in the room. Tommy felt tears start in his eyes, but they weren't sad tears. They were tears that came from hearing exactly the words his heart needed. When the moon gets lonely, she wraps us in her light and whispers gentle stories to carry us through night. Sarah Kim's mother reached over and took her daughter's hand. The poem was describing exactly how Sarah felt when she looked out her hospital window at night, hoping the moon would help her feel less afraid. When the sun feels heavy with all the world's pain, she paints the sky with colors to help us hope again. Marcus Johnson's parents looked at each other with tears in their eyes. Their son had been so brave through months of treatment, and these words seemed to honor that bravery in a way that made their hearts full. And when a heart is breaking from things too hard to bear, the universe leans closer to show us love is there. When Musk finished reading his childhood poem, the silence in the room was profound and sacred. It was the kind of silence that happens when people hear something so true and beautiful that words feel unnecessary. Then Tommy Valdez spoke up in his small, clear voice that somehow carried to every corner of the room. Mr. Lon, that's the most beautiful thing I ever heard. Tommy's words broke the spell, and suddenly everyone was talking at once. But it wasn't the chattering of a crowd, it was the sound of people who had been deeply moved, trying to express feelings they didn't quite have words for. Dr. Martinez, the tough head of oncology who rarely showed emotion, pulled off his glasses to wipe his eyes. Nurses who dealt with difficult situations every day found themselves crying openly. Parents who had been holding back their fears for months felt safe enough to let their emotions show. Sarah Kim raised her hand like she was in school. Mr. Musk, she said in her show voice. Yes. Sarah, could you read that again? I want to remember every word. Musk smiled, and this time it wasn't the careful smile he used in business meetings. It was the genuine, warm smile of someone who had just connected with another person's heart. Of course, he said, and he read the poem again, even slower this time. As he read the words about stars remembering what it's like to be small, about the moon wrapping lonely people in light, about the universe showing love to broken hearts, something incredible happened. The children weren't just listening to poetry anymore. They were hearing their own feelings reflected back to them by someone who understood what it meant to feel small and scared and hope for better days. Jake Morrison stood at the back of the room, feeling awful about his prank idea. He looked around at the crying parents, the moved hospital staff, and the children whose faces glowed with something that looked like peace. He had wanted to embarrass Elon Musk, but instead he had helped create one of the most beautiful moments he had ever witnessed. When Musk finished reading his poem the second time, he folded the paper carefully and put it back in his jacket pocket. Thank you all for letting me share that, he said. I wrote those words when I felt alone and afraid, but being here tonight, seeing how brave and strong all of you are, reminds me that none of us are really alone. We're all connected by hope and love and the belief that tomorrow can be better than today. The applause that followed was different from any applause anyone in that room had ever heard. It wasn't just clapping for a good performance, it was the sound of hearts recognizing other hearts, of people saying thank you for sharing something precious and real. Tommy called out from his wheelchair, "Mr. Elon, will you come sit with us for a while?" Instead of leaving the stage like a typical celebrity would, Musk stepped down and walked directly to where the children were sitting. He pulled up a chair and sat down right in the middle of them, as if this was exactly where he belonged. "Tell me about your dreams," he said to Tommy. "Tell me about your poems," he said to Sarah. "Tell me about your rocket ship," he said to Marcus. And for the next hour, the man who usually spent his time thinking about Mars missions and electric cars sat on the floor of a hospital lobby, listening to sick children share their hopes and fears and dreams. Jake watched all of this happen and realized something important. His prank hadn't failed, it had succeeded in a way he never could have imagined. But instead of creating embarrassment and laughter, it had created connection and beauty and hope. Maya approached Jake during a quiet moment. "Are you going to tell him?" she asked. "Tell him what?" "About the prank. About how this really started." Jake looked at Musk sitting cross-legged next to Tommy's wheelchair, both of them drawing pictures of rocket ships on a piece of paper. "I don't know," Jake said honestly. "Maybe some secrets are meant to stay secret." But Maya shook her head. "He shared his most personal poem with us. Don't we owe him the truth?" As the evening continued and the formal fundraising part began, Maya made a decision. She was going to tell Elon Musk exactly how he had ended up reading poetry to sick children on Halloween night. She just hoped he would forgive them for starting with a lie that had somehow turned into the most honest and beautiful evening any of them had ever experienced. The fundraising part of the evening was going better than anyone had dreamed. After hearing Musk's poetry, people were opening their wallets and hearts. Donations poured in from everyone in the room: wealthy business owners, hospital staff, and even some of the families of patients. By 9 o'clock, they had already raised more than $750,000. That was enough to buy the new cancer treatment machine and fund art therapy programs for the next 2 years. But Maya Chen couldn't enjoy the success. Every time she looked at Elon Musk sitting with the children, laughing at Marcus's jokes or listening to Sarah read from her diary, she felt worse about the lie that had started it all. Tommy was showing Musk his drawings of rocket ships. "This one can carry 20 astronauts to Mars," Tommy explained seriously. "And this one has a special room for kids who are sick, so they can get better while they travel through space." "That's brilliant engineering, Tommy," Musk said, studying the crayon drawings with the same attention he gave real spacecraft designs. "Every good space mission needs a medical bay." Sarah had worked up the courage to read one of her poems to Musk. It was about feeling dizzy but still wanting to dance. When she finished, Musk told her it reminded him of poems by Emily Dickinson. "Really?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide. "You think my poems are like hers?" "I think you both understand how to find beauty in difficult times," Musk replied gently. Marcus was explaining his rocket ship wagon to Musk in great detail. "The fins make it go faster," Marcus said confidently, "and the nose cone is pointy so it can cut through the air like a sword." Musk nodded seriously. "Aerodynamics are very important in rocket design. You clearly understand the principles." As Maya watched these sweet interactions, she felt like her heart might break. This man had shared his most personal childhood memory with them. He was treating these sick children like they were the most important people in the world, and it had all started with Jake's mean-spirited prank. Around 10 o'clock, families began taking their children back to their rooms. The kids were tired but happy. Several parents stopped to thank Musk personally for making their children smile in ways they hadn't seen in months. "Thank you for reminding my daughter that she's not alone," Tommy's mother said, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for showing my son that successful people can also be kind," said Marcus's father. "Thank you for proving that words can be medicine too," whispered Sarah's mother. As the lobby began to empty, Maya knew it was time. She couldn't let Musk leave without knowing the truth. She found Jake helping clean up decorations from the walls. "I'm going to tell him," Maya said firmly. Jake stopped pulling down orange streamers. "Maya, are you sure? Look how happy everyone is. Why ruin it?" "Because he deserves to know," Maya replied. "He was honest with us. We should be honest with him." Jake looked across the lobby at Musk, who was still sitting with the last few children, reading them one more poem from his book. "What if he gets angry?" Jake asked. "What if he feels like we made a fool of him? Then we'll deal with that," Maya said. "But keeping this secret would make us bigger fools than any prank ever could," Jake sighed. He knew Maya was right, even though he was scared about what might happen. "Okay," he said quietly, "but I'm the one who should tell him. It was my stupid idea." Maya shook her head. "We'll tell him together. We're both responsible." They waited until the last family had gone upstairs and the news crews had packed up their cameras. Musk was saying goodbye to the hospital director and preparing to leave. Maya took a deep breath and walked over to him. "Elon," she said, her voice shaking slightly, "could Jake and I speak with you privately for a moment?" Musk looked curious but nodded. "Of course." Maya led him to a quiet corner of the lobby where they could talk without being overheard. Jake followed behind them, looking like he was walking to his own punishment. "What's on your mind?" Musk asked, sitting down in one of the comfortable chairs. Maya felt her heart pounding. "We need to tell you something about tonight. About how you really got invited here." Musk tilted his head slightly, waiting for her to continue. "The truth is," Maya began, then stopped. The words felt stuck in her throat. Jake stepped forward. "It was my idea," he said quickly. "I wanted to invite you here as a prank." Maya continued the explanation. "Jake thought it would be funny to watch you struggle with reading poetry in front of everyone. He expected you to be uncomfortable and awkward. He thought people would laugh." They both waited for Musk's reaction, expecting anger or disappointment or hurt feelings. Instead, Musk was quiet for a long moment. Then, to their complete surprise, he smiled. "I know," he said simply. "You know?" Maya asked, confused. "Elena, my assistant, figured it out pretty quickly." Musk explained calmly. The invitation was worded in a way that made the intent fairly obvious. She wanted to decline immediately, but I told her to accept anyway. Jake stared at him. "But why, if you knew it was supposed to be a joke? Why did you come?" Musk leaned back in his chair, choosing his words carefully. "Because I realized something when I read that invitation. For months, maybe even years, I've been so focused on rockets and cars and business meetings that I forgot about the things that made me want to build those things in the first place." He paused, looking toward the now empty lobby where children had listened to poetry just hours before. "I started SpaceX because I wanted to give people hope about the future. I created Tesla because I wanted to help save our planet for the kids who will inherit it. But somewhere along the way, I stopped connecting with the actual people those dreams were supposed to help." Maya listened, realizing that Jake's prank had led to consequences none of them had expected. "When I was practicing those poems this week," Musk continued, "I remembered why words and dreams and human connection matter. And tonight, sitting with Tommy and Sarah and Marcus, I remembered why all the work I do has to be about more than just technology." Jake found his voice. "So you're not angry about the prank?" Musk shook his head. "How could I be angry about something that led to this evening? Your prank helped me remember who I used to be before I got so busy being successful." Maya felt relief washing over her. "What will you tell Elena when you get back to California?" "I'll tell her that sometimes the best things happen when we say yes to invitations that don't make perfect sense," Musk replied. "And I'll ask her to help me find more opportunities like this one." He stood up and shook both of their hands. "Thank you for tonight. Thank you for the prank that wasn't really a prank. Thank you for reminding me that the most important technology we have isn't rockets or computers. It's our ability to connect with each other through words and kindness." As Musk walked toward the hospital entrance, Jake called after him, "Will you come back sometime, just to visit the kids?" Musk turned around with that genuine smile they had seen all evening. "Try to stop me," he said. After his car disappeared into the Austin night, Maya and Jake stood in the empty lobby surrounded by leftover Halloween decorations and the lingering feeling that something magical had just happened. "So, Jake said slowly. My prank to embarrass a billionaire accidentally turned into the most beautiful evening any of us have ever had. Maya nodded. And he knew about it the whole time but came anyway because he needed it as much as the kids did. They looked around at the space where poetry and honesty and hope had transformed everyone who heard it. I think, Maya said finally. This is going to be a night we remember for the rest of our lives. Jake couldn't argue with that. 3 weeks after the Halloween poetry night, Austin Children's Hospital looked different. The hallways were filled with something new, a hope that you could actually see and feel. Maya Chen walked through the pediatric ward on a sunny November morning, carrying her medical charts and wearing a smile that had become permanent since that magical evening. The fundraiser had brought in $780,000, which was more money than the hospital had ever raised in a single event. But the money wasn't the most important change. The walls of the children's wing were now covered with poems written by the young patients. After hearing Musk read his childhood words, kids throughout the hospital had started writing their own verses about hope, dreams, and being brave. Maya stopped to read a new poem that had appeared overnight. It was written by a 9-year-old boy named David who had just started cancer treatment. When I feel scared at night, I think about the rocket man who was scared when he was little too but still learned how to fly. Maya smiled and made a mental note to share David's poem with the other staff members. Since Halloween night, she had started a new program where doctors and nurses would read poetry with their patients. It turned out that words really could be medicine. She walked into Tommy Valdez's room and found him sitting up in bed, writing in a notebook. His latest test results had been better than anyone expected. The new cancer treatment machine they bought with the fundraiser money was helping his body fight the disease more effectively. What are you working on, Tommy? Maya asked. Tommy looked up with bright eyes. I'm writing a letter to Mr. Elon. I want to tell him that my blood counts are getting better, and I want to share my new rocket designs with him. Maya sat down next to Tommy's bed. That sounds wonderful. What kind of rockets are you designing now? Hospital rockets, Tommy said excitedly. Spaceships that can carry medicine to kids on other planets. And maybe kids from other planets can come here if they get sick and need our help. Tommy's imagination had grown even bigger since meeting his hero. But more importantly, his body was responding well to treatment. Dr. Martinez was cautiously optimistic that Tommy might beat his cancer. Maya's next stop was Sarah Kim's room. She found Sarah sitting by the window, writing in her diary as usual. But now Sarah's writing time was different. Instead of writing alone, she had 3 other kids gathered around her, all working on poems together. Dr. Maya, Sarah called out when she saw her. Look what we made. Sarah held up a piece of paper with a poem written in 4 different handwritings. 4 children had worked together to create verses about friendship and helping each other through hard times. We're calling ourselves the Star Poets, explained Maria, a 7-year-old girl with leukemia, because Mr. Musk's poem talked about stars remembering what it's like to be small. Sarah's brain tumor was stable, and the new treatment equipment was helping doctors monitor it more carefully. But even more importantly, Sarah had found her voice. She was no longer the quiet, shy girl who wrote alone. She had become a leader who helped other kids express their feelings through words. Down the hall, Maya could hear laughter coming from Marcus Johnson's room. She peeked inside and saw Marcus entertaining 6 other children with a funny story about rocket ships that could only fly backwards. And then, Marcus was saying with dramatic gestures, the backwards rocket landed on Mars, but everything was upside down. The Martians had to stand on their heads just to talk to the astronauts. The other kids giggled at Marcus's silly story. He had always been good at making people laugh. But now his humor had a purpose. He was helping other children forget about their pain for a few minutes each day. Marcus was in complete remission. His doctors were amazed at how well his body had responded to treatment. They thought he might be able to go home permanently by Christmas. Maya finished her morning rounds and went to the break room, where she found Jake Morrison reading a book. But it wasn't a medical textbook or a magazine. It was a collection of poems by Langston Hughes. Look who's become a poetry fan, Maya said, sitting down across from him. Jake looked up with a sheepish grin. I'm trying to understand what made that night so special. I've been reading poems every day since Halloween, since the poetry evening. Jake had changed in ways that surprised everyone who knew him. He still liked to joke around and make people laugh, but now he also spent time listening to the children talk about their fears and dreams. He had learned that sometimes the best medicine was simply paying attention to what kids needed to say. "Find any good ones?" Maya asked. "All of them," Jake said honestly. "I never knew words could do what they did that night. I keep thinking about how I almost missed it because I was too busy planning a stupid joke." Jake had become the hospital's unofficial poetry coordinator. He helped kids write verses, organized reading groups, and even started a pen pal program where children in their hospital exchanged poems with kids in other hospitals around the country. "Any word from our famous friend?" Jake asked out. Maya smiled. "Elena called yesterday. Elon wants to visit again next week. No cameras, no crowds. He just wants to spend time with the kids." This wouldn't be Musk's first return visit. He had come back twice already, always quietly and always focused entirely on the children. He brought Tommy new books about space exploration. He listened to Sarah's latest poems. He laughed at Marcus's backwards rocket stories. But more than that, Musk had started something bigger. The week after Halloween, his company announced a new program called Words for Tomorrow. SpaceX would fund creative writing programs in children's hospitals across the United States. They would provide books, art supplies, and train volunteers to help kids express themselves through poetry and stories. Musk had also established a scholarship fund for young people who had battled serious illnesses and wanted to study science, engineering, or literature. He said he wanted to support kids who understood both the power of technology and the importance of human connection. "Dr. Chen," a voice called from the doorway. It was Mrs. Valdez, Tommy's mother. "How can I help you?" Maya asked. Mrs. Valdez was holding an envelope. "Tommy asked me to give this to you. He says it's important." Maya opened the envelope and found a drawing of a rocket ship with words written on it in Tommy's careful hand. Writing, "Thank you for bringing the rocket man to us. He taught me that being scared doesn't mean you can't be brave, and being small doesn't mean you can't have big dreams. When I grow up and go to Mars, I'm going to take a poem with me so the planet will know that kids from Earth believe in hope." Maya felt tears forming in her eyes. "Tell Tommy this is beautiful. He wants to know if you'll help him send it to Mr. Musk," Mrs. Valdez said. "Of course," Maya replied. That afternoon, Maya sat in her office thinking about how much had changed since Jake's crazy prank idea. The children were writing poetry. The staff was more connected to their patients' emotional needs. The hospital had new equipment that was saving lives, but the biggest change was harder to measure. There was something in the air at Austin Children's Hospital now, a feeling that words mattered, that dreams were worth protecting, and that even the smallest acts of kindness could change everything. Maya's phone rang. It was Elena Vasquez. "Dr. Chen, I have a message from Elon. He wanted me to read you something." "Of course," Maya said. Elena's voice became softer as she read, "Tell Dr. Chen and Jake that I've been thinking about that night every day. I came to Austin planning to read poetry to children, but I ended up learning more than I taught. Those kids reminded me that the best technology in the world means nothing if we forget how to connect with each other's hearts. Thank you for the prank that wasn't really a prank. Thank you for helping me remember who I wanted to be when I was 12 years old and writing my first poem." After Elena hung up, Maya sat quietly in her office, looking out the window at the Austin skyline. Sometimes the most beautiful things happened in the most unexpected ways. A prank designed to embarrass someone had instead created connections that would last forever. A joke had turned into hope, and a lie had somehow led everyone involved to discover the most important truths about themselves. Maya picked up her phone to call Jake. She wanted to share Musk's message with the man whose silly idea had accidentally changed so many lives. 6 months after the Halloween poetry night that changed everything, spring had come to Austin Children's Hospital. The Texas sun streamed through windows that were now decorated with colorful poems written by young patients from around the world. Maya Chen walked through halls that had been transformed in ways no one could have imagined. What started as Jake's prank had grown into something that reached far beyond their hospital walls. She carried a thick folder full of letters. Children from hospitals in California, New York, Florida, And even other countries had been writing to Tommy, Sarah, and Marcus. The Words for Tomorrow program had connected sick kids across the globe, all sharing poems and stories about hope. Maya's first stop was Tommy Valdez's room, but she found it empty. Tommy was no longer a patient. His cancer was gone, completely. Defeated by the new treatment machine they had bought with the fundraiser money, but Tommy still came to the hospital every week as a volunteer. Maya found him in the art therapy room, helping a 6-year-old girl named Lucy write her first poem. "Remember, Lucy," Tommy was saying patiently, "poems don't have to rhyme perfectly. They just have to come from your heart." Lucy was struggling with the same type of leukemia Tommy had fought, but now she had something Tommy hadn't had when he started treatment, a guide who understood exactly what she was going through. "Dr. Mai." Tommy called out when he saw her. He had grown 3 inches since Halloween and gained back all the weight he had lost during treatment. His hair had grown back thick and curly. "How's our newest poet doing?" Maya asked, sitting down next to Lucy. "She's amazing," Tommy said proudly. "Lucy wrote a poem about her teddy bear going to space with her. Want to hear it?" Lucy nodded shyly and read her poem in a small voice. "My bear has one eye missing, but he's brave just like me. We're going to fly to Jupiter where sick kids can be free." Maya felt the familiar tightness in her throat that happened whenever she heard these children's words. "That's beautiful, Lucy. I think your bear would make an excellent astronaut." Tommy had kept his promise to stay in touch with Elon Musk. They emailed each other every week, sharing rocket designs and space facts. Musk had even invited Tommy to visit SpaceX headquarters when he turned 10 next month. "Mr. Elon says he's going to name a rocket after our hospital," Tommy told Maya excitedly. "The Austin Hope. It's going to carry supplies to the International Space Station." Maya smiled, though part of her wondered if Musk was serious or just being kind to a child. Either way, Tommy's joy was real, and that's what mattered most. Next stop was the hospital's new poetry library. Sarah Kim was there, as she was every afternoon after school. Sarah's brain tumor had remained stable for 6 months now, and she was back to attending regular classes. But more importantly, Sarah had become the hospital's unofficial poet laureate. She helped other children write verses, organized weekly poetry readings, and had even started a blog where young patients could share their writing with the world. "Dr. Maya," Sarah called out when she saw her. "Look what came in the mail." Sarah held up a thick package. "It's from a children's hospital in Japan. They translated some of our poems into Japanese, and they sent us poems they wrote in English." Maya looked at the beautiful papers covered with both English and Japanese writing. Children from completely different cultures were connecting through words about hope, fear, and dreams. "This is incredible, Sarah. How many hospitals are part of the poetry exchange now?" 47, Sarah said proudly. "Kids all over the world are writing to each other. And guess what? Mr. Musk's company is paying for all the translations and mail costs." Sarah had blossomed from a shy, scared girl into a confident young leader. Her balance problems still existed, but she had learned to work around them. She used a special chair when she felt dizzy, and she had trained 3 other kids to help run the poetry programs when she needed to rest. Maya's last stop was the pediatric playroom, where she knew she would find Marcus Johnson. Marcus had been cancer-free for 4 months now and was scheduled to ring the hospital's victory bell next week, officially marking the end of his treatment. But Marcus, like Tommy, kept coming back as a volunteer. His job was simple but important. He made kids laugh. Maya found him in the middle of telling a story to 8 children, all sitting in a circle around him. Even kids who felt too sick to talk were smiling at whatever silly tale Marcus was spinning. And then the astronaut pig realized that Mars was actually made of bacon, Marcus said with dramatic arm gestures. So he had to decide should he eat his new planet or find somewhere else to live. The children giggled at the ridiculous story. Marcus had always been funny, but now his humor had purpose. He understood that sometimes laughter was the best medicine of all. "What did the pig decide?" asked a little boy named Alex who was just starting chemotherapy. "Well," Marcus said thoughtfully, "he decided that sharing Bacon Planet with his friends was better than eating it all by himself. So, he invited astronauts from Earth to come have a big space barbecue." The children clapped and cheered at the Happy ending. Maya watched Marcus high-five each kid and realized that his silly stories were teaching them something important, that even in difficult situations, you could choose joy. After the story time ended, Maya gathered all three of her former patients together. Tommy, Sarah, and Marcus had become the hospital's unofficial ambassadors of hope. "I have some news to share," Maya told them. "Elena called this morning. Elon wants to visit next week for a special announcement." "What kind of announcement?" Tommy asked, bouncing with excitement. "I don't know yet," Maya admitted, "but Elena said it's something that will make everyone very happy." The three children looked at each other with growing excitement. In the 6 months since Halloween, their lives had changed in ways they never could have imagined. They had gone from being scared patients to being leaders who helped other kids find courage. That evening, Maya sat in her office reviewing the day's events. Jake knocked on her door and entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Long day?" he asked, sitting down across from her desk. "The best kind of long day," Maya replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. Jake had changed as much as anyone since that Halloween night. He still loved to make people laugh, but now he also understood the power of listening. He had become the hospital's coordinator for all the creative therapy programs, and children trusted him with their deepest fears and biggest dreams. "Did you hear about the astronaut pig planet?" Maya asked. Jake laughed. "Marcus told me that story 3 times today. I think it's his new favorite." They sat quietly for a moment, both thinking about how far they had all come. "Maya," Jake said slowly, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if Musk had said no to our invitation?" Maya considered the question. "I think about that sometimes. But then I remember what he told us, that the best things happen when we say yes to invitations that don't make perfect sense. Even invitations that start as pranks, especially those," Maya said with a smile. Outside her office window, the Austin skyline glittered in the spring evening. Somewhere in those lights, children were writing poems, parents were reading bedtime stories, and hope was growing in ways that couldn't be measured but could definitely be felt. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new patients, and new opportunities to help kids find their voices through words. But tonight, Maya was content to sit with her friend Jake, drinking coffee and marveling at how one silly idea had accidentally created so much beauty in the world. The prank that wasn't really a prank had become something none of them could have planned, but all of them had needed. And the best part was, the story was still being written. 1 year after the Halloween night that changed everything, Austin Children's Hospital was preparing for something special. Elon Musk was coming back. But this time it wasn't for a quiet visit with the children. This time, he had asked to speak with the entire staff and all the families who could attend. Maya Chen stood in the same lobby where it all began, but now it looked completely different. The walls were covered with hundreds of poems written by children from around the world. A beautiful display showed photos of kids from 47 different hospitals, all connected by words and hope. In the center of the lobby stood something that made Maya's heart swell with pride: a bronze statue of a child reading a book, with the inscription, "In memory of all the young poets who taught us that courage comes in small packages and big dreams." Tommy Valdez, now cancer-free for 8 months, was helping set up chairs for the gathering. He had grown tall and strong, and his dream of becoming an astronaut seemed more possible every day. Musk had kept his promise. Next month, Tommy would visit SpaceX headquarters as part of a new program for young people interested in space exploration. Sarah Kim was arranging flowers near the stage. Her brain tumor remained stable, and she had just published a small book of poems called Finding Balance. All the money from book sales went to help other children get art therapy treatment. Marcus Johnson was entertaining younger kids while their parents set up. He was completely healthy now and had started a comedy club at his regular school. But every week, he still came to the hospital to make children laugh during their hardest moments. "Dr. Maya," Tommy called out, "Mr. Elon just arrived." Maya looked toward the entrance and saw Musk walking in with Elena Vasquez, but this time, he wasn't alone. Behind them came a group of people Maya didn't recognize: doctors, engineers, and what looked like news reporters. Jake Morrison joined Maya as they walked over to greet their famous visitor. Elon. Maya said warmly, "It's wonderful to see you." "Again, the pleasure is mine," Musk replied, giving her a genuine smile. "I have some people I'd like you to meet." He introduced them to Dr. Jennifer Liu, a pediatric specialist from Johns Hopkins Hospital. Next was Dr. Carlos Rodriguez from Children's Hospital Los Angeles. There was also an engineer named David Park and a woman named Lisa Chen who worked for a major publishing company. "We've been working on something together," Musk explained, "something that started because of what happened here a year ago." As more families gathered in the lobby, Maya noticed that several people were carrying cameras and notebooks. But these weren't regular news reporters. They seemed to be documenting something important rather than just looking for a quick story. When everyone was seated, Musk stepped up to the microphone that had been placed on the same stage where he had first read poetry to sick children. "A year ago, I came to this hospital to read poems," he began. "I thought I was doing a favor for some kids who needed cheering up. I had no idea that those children and this hospital were about to change my life completely." Tommy, Sarah, and Marcus sat in the front row, beaming with pride as their friend spoke. "What I learned that night," Musk continued, "is that healing isn't just about medicine and machines. It's also about hope, connection, and the power of words to touch people's hearts." He gestured toward the walls covered with children's poetry. "Because of what started here, kids in hospitals all over the world are now connected. They're sharing their stories, their fears, their dreams, and their strength with each other." Maya felt a familiar tightness in her throat as she listened. "But today, I want to announce something bigger," Musk said, his voice growing stronger. "Dr. Liu, Dr. Rodriguez, and teams of medical experts have been working with us to create something revolutionary." Dr. Liu stepped up to join Musk at the microphone. "We call it the Global Children's Healing Network," she said. "It's a program that will connect every children's hospital in the world through technology, poetry, art therapy, and shared medical knowledge." Maya's eyes widened. This was bigger than anything she had imagined. Every child fighting a serious illness will have access to the same level of care, regardless of where they live, Dr. Rodriguez added. "But more than that, they'll have access to hope, friendship, and creative expression that helps them heal from the inside out." Musk took the microphone back. "We're starting with 100 hospitals across 6 continents. Each hospital will receive funding for art therapy programs, poetry libraries, creative writing coordinators, and the technology to connect with children anywhere in the world." The audience began to murmur with excitement and amazement. "But that's not all," Musk continued with a smile. "We're also launching the Young Poets Scholarship Foundation. Any child who has battled a serious illness and wants to study medicine, engineering, writing, or any field that helps others will receive full educational support through college." Sarah Kim's mother started crying. Tommy's grandmother reached over to squeeze his hand. Marcus's parents looked at each other in wonder. "This foundation will be run by 3 very special consultants," Musk said, looking directly at the front row. "Tommy Valdez will advise us on programs for future scientists and engineers. Sarah Kim will coordinate our global poetry exchange initiatives, and Marcus Johnson will help us develop humor therapy programs that bring joy to children facing difficult treatments." The 3 children looked shocked, then thrilled, then overwhelmed all at once. But Musk wasn't finished. "I also want to share something that I've never told anyone before," he said, his voice becoming softer. "When I first received the invitation to come here, I almost said no. My assistant Elena told me it seemed like it might be some kind of prank or joke." Maya and Jake exchanged glances, remembering their confession from a year ago. "But then I remembered something my mother once told me," Musk continued. "She said that sometimes the most important moments in our lives come disguised as ordinary invitations. She said we should always be brave enough to say yes when someone asks us to share our hearts." He paused, looking around the room at all the faces, children, parents, doctors, nurses, and volunteers who had been touched by what started as Jake's silly prank that Halloween night. "You didn't just invite me to read poetry," Musk said. "You invited me to remember who I wanted to be when I was a scared 12-year-old boy writing his first poem." You reminded me that building rockets and cars means nothing if we forget how to build connections between human hearts. Tommy stood up from his chair. Mr. Elon, can I say something? Musk nodded and gestured for Tommy to join him on stage. Tommy took the microphone in his small hands and spoke clearly. You taught us that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do important things even when you are scared. Thank you for showing us that words can be rockets that carry hope to places where people need it most. The applause that filled the lobby was unlike anything Maya had ever heard. It was the sound of hearts recognizing other hearts, of dreams becoming reality, of a small prank growing into something that would help children around the world. As the formal announcement ended and people began to mingle, Maya found herself standing with Jake in the same corner where they had confessed their prank to Musk a year ago. So, Jake said quietly, my stupid joke about watching a billionaire stumble through poetry accidentally created a global network that will help millions of children. Maya nodded, still absorbing everything they had just heard. And 3 kids from our hospital are now going to help run programs that will reach every continent. They watched Musk sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by children who were showing him their latest poems and drawings. He looked exactly like he belonged there. Maya, Jake said thoughtfully, do you think he planned all this from the beginning? Do you think he knew that first night would lead to something this big? Maya considered the question as she watched. Sarah read a poem to a group of visiting doctors, Tommy explained rocket designs to the engineers, and Marcus make everyone laugh with another silly story. I think, she said finally, that the best kind of magic happens when people are brave enough to be honest with each other. We were honest about our prank. He was honest about his childhood fears. The kids were honest about their dreams. And somehow all that honesty grew into something none of us could have planned but all of us needed. As the sun set over Austin that evening, children in hospitals around the world were writing poems, sharing stories, and discovering that they weren't alone in their fights. What had started as one nurse's prank had become a global movement of hope. And in a small corner of Texas, 3 former patients and 2 hospital staff members sat together, marveling at how the most beautiful things in life often begin with the simplest acts of courage. The story that began with a lie had become the truest thing any of them had ever experienced. We'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and tell us your city or country. And it's amazing to see how stories like this one bring people together from all corners of the world. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales that celebrate the power of human connection and unexpected kindness. We share stories that remind us all that hope, courage, and compassion can be found in the most surprising places. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and family. In a world that sometimes feels divided, stories like Tommy's bravery, Sarah's poetry, and even Jake's accidental wisdom remind us that we're all connected by our capacity to care for one another. Because sometimes the most beautiful things happen when we're brave enough to say yes to unexpected invitations. Just like Elon Musk did that Halloween night. Thank you for listening. And remember, your words have power too.